What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Well, welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, Juliette.
It's a pleasure to be here, Robin.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I had seen you on some previous podcasts and some all of these different freedom channels that we're now congregating to.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to speak to you about this because I feel like your story is just such a concentrated, exaggerated version of what's happening to all of us on a planetary scale. You know,
strangely,
the gaslighting,
yes.
the feeling, when you see what's happening, I can't help but feel like I'm going insane because it just seems so obvious. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself, I have in all the show notes your background story, and I kind of want to go into that a little bit, but I know you've said that story many, many times. And so to give our listeners sort of a backdrop, and then I want to discuss with you who I think is the best person ever. What is this playbook that they're playing us with?
Sure. I'm 74 years old. I am a physician, but I started life in an MK Ultra program, and I was sold into it by my parents. The whole family was OSS, which is the precursor to the CIA. All of my uncles, there were 5 of them, were at the Nuremberg trials and very active in bringing Nazi scientists over after World War II into Project Paperclip. So a lot of looks like the oldest girls in each family of my family were put into programs. We didn't know each other, so we were all kept apart until our 60s and 70s. So we've gotten together since then. But when you're young, that's a long way off. I was put into a program. It's covered in my book, Sparky Surviving Sex Magic. So I recommend people read that. It was a real struggle for me to write that because I had to relive parts of all the things that I forgot and really don't want to remember. And anybody that's been in those situations have large memory losses for good lapses, really. They're still there, but the lapses, they can't easily walled off the memories. So that included torture, ritual satanic abuse, participation in human sacrifice, cannibalism. I mean, lots of good reasons why you wouldn't want to remember any of that. But it is all relevant to what's happening now. So as I look back at being in MK Ultra, and in that program, you don't connect. I mean, an absence of human connection is probably the most important element in that. You learn to distrust your parents, your relatives. You're disconnected from the rest of your family. So like my cousins and I were completely separated. Even though we lived 5 minutes apart, we didn't know about each other. Throughout my childhood, we moved every 6 months. So we went from state to state. The schools would pick up that something was happening to me. I'd be bruised, anemic. I can't imagine how awful I looked. Skinny. I'd have black eyes periodically in school. And now I know that was from the adrenochrome and the blood extraction, because my only health problem was chronic anemia, but I shouldn't have had it. So the everything was arranged to take certain individuals from certain families, isolate them, and I believe they were trying to extract our souls. And I think that's going on now. And I think that happened to a lot of people in the program. Now, in the 1970s, Congress investigated the MK Ultra programs, and it was their conclusion. I mean, the CIA came forward and said they had 85 institutions and 150 different programs, and they talked about the sex magic program, which is the one that I was in, but they also had super soldier programs where they were even genetically altering the DNA of little boys, to make them into killing machines. They had we were the Young Leaders program of the CIA, so I look at the WEF has its Young Leaders program. I wonder what they put them through. They're probably all graduates of MK Ultra, because the key is if you don't have a soul, but you're smart and you can operate in the existing human system, which is what is driving everybody crazy right now, is it's being run by people with no soul. So how did they lose their souls? I think you're seeing thousands of people who were smart, talented, capable, and were stripped of their souls. And now all you had to do is give up your soul, and all the torture, all the degradation and the sexual abuse would end, and you would be rewarded with a scholarship to an Ivy League school, and I'm sure you went off. If I had given up my soul and cooperated, I probably would be Secretary of State right now and a detestable person.
Yes.
But now I'm just poor and quite happy with keeping my soul.
Yeah.
But
how do you, just really quick, how do you give up your soul?
Well, there's one process that I will describe, because there's many ways. It's always given as an option, and it's like a contract. You contract to give up your soul. And when I was in the program, the thing that I remember, because it happened over and over, was they would tie me to a wheel that had symbols on it, and you see these symbols in star forts. You see these symbols. I drew a picture of these symbols once, and actually I can show it to you. I think
I would like that.
Okay, I'm gonna. I have it as a background, so let's see if I can pop it up here. It'll come up behind me. Yeah, there it is.
Oh.
If I can move to the side, can you see that?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't really move it up and down. But that's I could also send you the picture.
Yeah, I'll have that too. I can do that in the show artwork.
Okay, I'll send you that later.
Oh wow.
But that was one of the first things I did when I was trying to remember. Just draw what comes out of your mind, and that's what came out of my head. And sent me on a journey through years of therapy and trying to remember it. It really wasn't until I got a hold of Kathy O'Brien's material, and she and her friend who had helped her released a CD that had thousands of documents from the Church Commission, who was the Congressional Commission investigating MK Ultra and specifically sex magic. And 90% of it was redacted, but I got enough out of that to realize that I wasn't crazy, that this had happened on a large scale, and it just gave me permission really to start remembering my own. But anyway, back to the giving up your soul, which I think is what's driving you crazy and everybody else that has a soul. They would tie me down, spin me on a wheel, going faster and faster and faster. And they would chant basically wokeism. They would be chanting, there is no man, there is no woman, there is no light, there is no dark, there is no good, there is no evil, there is no white, there is no black. It was on and on and on. So there was nothing. And at the end of it, when you're just about to vomit, what they say is there's only green. And what you're seeing when you're spinning at that point, and this is what the spinning Sufis say they see when they reach the point where their soul explodes, as you see green. And that's the green agenda right there, is the extinction of the human soul. So
Yes.
At that moment, when you see only green, you can give up your soul.
Okay.
But I didn't.
So it's
I
a conscious saying, will you acquiesce and give
Right.
away the soul so that all of this bad stuff will go away?
Yes. And you will be rewarded with the bling.
Yeah. And which way I think we can see all those people in our political theater.
Absolutely.
That's who's playing the roles, because there's just, I mean, it's so obvious once you can pan out and see it, but these are soulless people. They don't care who they destroy, children, women, and they don't care how they destroy them.
No, and it's not going to change, because once the soul's gone, the soul is gone. I don't know if you can get a soul back, but it's gone. And there's something called the senior executive service. And that's something that you don't hear about. And I keep trying to talk about it, and people are like, yeah. No, really, it's tens of thousands of soulless people who are in very high level positions. And what they do, they have a book called the Plum Book, and it's plum because it's purple, but it's this book that has the senior executive service listed in it. I don't think they publish it anymore, but they were in there. And just about everyone you're seeing that comes up that's attacking Donald Trump, or all this, leading the woke movement, they're all in that Plum Book as the senior executive service. And what that is an untouchable group who are paid higher than any other federal employees. They're sort of quasi-federal employees. And if you get a grant or a government contract, the State Department, it seems to be the State Department, although you can't be sure, will stick a senior executive service, one or two of them, in your organization, and they're supposed to be in charge of it. And I had this happen to me when I was doing grants in Russia. They would stick a senior executive person in there who had no competence, had no right to be there, but was paid 3 times what anybody else was paid, and basically given license to rat you out to the State Department and get you audited, and
Oh, wow.
and just cripple any forward progress. And that's true in businesses, and they show up in congressional offices. When I was working in Moscow, they lobby foreign governments. They're all over the place. And
what about the freedom movements that have started to form? Because
absolutely.
I think personally, when you are so in alignment with the light and you're in service of God, you can spot the soulless individuals a lot easier that other people can't see, that are kind of adoring and worshiping in their own way, but yet you can see it. And so I think then you're attacked because you're speaking out against. It's like, hey guys, you're heading down the same road. You're recreating the same dark based system by following these people, but yet then you're attacked. I mean, it's a perfect system if you're on that shadow side of things.
Yes, if you worship material things, you
Right.
look at how Hollywood is falling apart. Hollywood is the ultimate materialistic thing, and I grew up in that area, so a lot of the rituals, satanic rituals that I was subjected to, the Saturnalias, which is really what Christmas is. Christmas is the birth of the demon Nimrod. And so the Satanists all over the world celebrate with child sacrifice and cannibalism and these Saturnalias. And
just really quick, do you think that is why Hollywood originated, for us to worship these false gods, these stars that people completely lose their minds over so that they can influence us in their satanic shadow side of things?
Sure. My family was in Hollywood. My mother was born there in 1920, and they were sort of one of the founding families of Hollywood, and they were very much into the rituals, and it was a wealthy bloodline family and based in Hollywood. So I was a lot of the Saturnalias and the rituals and the ritual abuse took place at Disneyland.
Um,
And Disneyland was opened in 1955, 56. Disney World came later. In 1971 it opened, but in the 1950, when I first started going there, I was like 7 years old and it was still being built. And so the Saturnalias would take place at Disneyland. So right from the beginning, Disneyland was designed to attract children and to make it perfectly natural to have large groups of children there that were then abused and used in terrible ways. And if you look at the Disney movies in retrospect, I mean, look at Pinocchio. Pinocchio is all about that, attracting children to the island of whatever it was, and
it's
where
so obvious to me, though.
Obvious, yeah.
It was obvious to me, though, when I was a little girl.
Yeah,
I felt like it was dirty and sexual, but I couldn't explain why, and I didn't want to go to these places. But my parents never really understood what I was talking about. I was adopted, and definitely the black sheep of the family from the beginning. I mean, I said the earth is flat. These movies are pornographic. I don't know why. I can't explain why, but they are. They're dirty. Pinocchio's dirty. I don't want to watch them. And so they just kind of let me float off into the...
Well, that's your pesky human soul, you can't shut it up.
Exactly.
It's like, this isn't right.
Yeah, this isn't right. And you have to go against the grain and the shame and the judgment and losing all sorts of friends because of you're speaking the truth, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right. You have to accept wokeism.
Yeah.
Which
and
is the end of civilization.
I agree with the Bible. I mean, it's been hard for me to read the Bible. I've gone through it a couple of times, and it's hard for me to stick, but to understand like certain passages of the Bible, as the gates of heaven are narrow. And I think a lot of this is just, you have to know for your soul, are you willing to stand in your truth? Are you willing to stand in the light and to stand for that belief in God and the faith in God? Or are you willing to sell it for $1? Some people have sold their soul for $1. I've seen it happen. I mean, we saw in 2020, a lot of people sold their soul to, get a jab and
a donut.
And or a beer.
I couldn't believe that. Yeah, but it just shows that a lot of people aren't going to get it. I mean, it's not going to happen. So it's really up to the people that do get it to stand up and change things. No, you're not crazy. I couldn't read the Bible either. And I have a photographic memory. I went through med school. I've been all over the place. I speak several languages, but I could not get the Bible into my head. And I still have trouble with it. And I listened to it over and over and over. And it really wasn't until I was 70 that a friend of mine read it to me. I can't read the words. It's been blocked out of me, but I can hear them.
Yes.
And I think I had an incredible moment with the first 4 chapters of Revelation. It's the ones that everybody skips over because it's the history of the 7 churches of Asia. Yes. But by the time I'd read it, I'd been to all those places, and they're dust. There's nothing there. There's a few crumbled columns. There's nothing. And if you read the first 4 chapters, John predicts that's what is going to happen. He talks about the 7 falling stars and the 7 falling angels, and they landed on the place where each of the churches, they weren't churches, they were cities. So these were the glorious, these were the Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York of that time period. And they were all what we would call now star forts. Which is another really interesting topic.
I've delved a little bit into the star forts and the civilizations before, like Tartaria, and But you can't have those civilizations with free energy and primary water and abundance of everything because you can't control your slave population that way. And I think too, just quickly, when I heard you talk about the Bible in another podcast, I realized it has to be a blanket programming for most of us, because even the audio, I'll listen to the audio Bible, King James Version, and I'll just blank out.
Yes, it has to be. And I think we're targeted with messages all the time. I've never been able to stand watching network television because I hear the subliminal messages
Same.
that start triggering things, and I know what they're doing, and I know that they sell the subliminal messaging by the second.
Yeah.
So CNN can run all day and nobody watch it as long as the TVs are on.
That's right.
Because people are buying the subliminal seconds that tell you, get your shot, your shot,
Yeah. And and just an aside, every patient, I'm a home health nurse. I do home health and hospice. So I go into some pretty, underserved areas in Northern California, and the TV is on 100% of the time at a volume you can't speak. And when I say, can you please turn that down or off? They'll say, turn what off?
Yeah.
They don't even know it's on. And it's the flicker rate too. It's all of it. They have left no stone unturned this time. And also with the televisions and the programming and everything that's underneath us, we don't stand a chance when you're sitting there in front of it day in and day out. I cover all my cameras when they're not in use, and the TVs are always unplugged. We use it once or twice a year if my son wants to watch a movie, and that's about it. But it's, then we've got these mobile devices that how are we going to keep these Trojan horses out of our homes and our children, and trying not to continually be programmed.
Well, yeah, it's the full-on assault against the human soul. But the thing that can't be programmed is your soul.
That's right.
Enough people, and the Bible affirms that. And back to the first 4 chapters of Revelation, what John warns about, or what Jesus does through prophecy through John, is he's not saying be tolerant. In fact, he's saying do not be tolerant. If you are lukewarm, if you are accepting of evil, then I'll spit you out. He's not saying I'm going to wrap you in cotton and take you away in a rapture. He's saying, do not follow the practices of the Nicolaitans, who were the religion of what the heck, sort of like we are now. Really, we are following.
The spiritual community is one of the worst ones I see that's corrupted.
Yeah, it's the belief that tolerance of everything is good. And the most important thing to be is nice, which is why we have to, pound down our alpha males to make them ineffective, because they would say, no, you've got to reject evil. You reject the enemy, and the enemy is infiltrated deep. And the Nicolaitans were basically the followers of Nimrod, which what are we?
Right.
So they celebrated the Saturnalia on the 25th. So all of the cities of Asia would be celebrating the birth of Nimrod with Christmas, with trees, with pine, with cinnamon, with music, with golden balls, with lights. So they were celebrating Christmas. So are we going to be able to tell Christians, are they ever going to understand that we're doing the same thing?
Right.
And the cities of Asia were beautiful. They were the epitomes of culture and art and music and dance, and they're dust.
Right.
And Jesus said, if you don't stop this tolerance of evil, Pergamon, he called the seat of Satan. And the Nazis took this so seriously that in the 1930s, they sent archaeological teams to Pergamon, which was the most beautiful of all the cities of Asia, of Turkey. It's Turkey now. And they took everything to Berlin. So if you want to see anything from Pergamon right now, it's in Berlin on a museum island Yeah. So because that had power, that had Satan's power, and they wanted it.
Um,
So it's not
and wasn't Werner
surprising.
von Braun, one of the Nazis, wasn't he best friends with Walt Disney?
Yes. Well, not just him. There were thousands of them that came.
Yeah, Operation Paperclip.
Yeah. Yeah. My family was very influential on helping them relocate, get new identities, and then enthusiastically stuck their children in their mind control programs.
That's what I don't understand, because especially, going to nursing school, I know what we learned, and we all joked around. It's like, this isn't nursing school. This is a pharmaceutical advertisement indoctrination camp. That's what it was. But yet learning how the body works never made sense. I think that's all programming too, to make the pharmaceutical models work. But just all of it comes back to, in your heart what's true. They can't corrupt that. So God is in the choice. What are you going to choose this time? What are you going to choose that time? And to understand, like, we're under one world government. If they faked all these world wars, because if they they say the United States, we won and Germany lost, but yet all of the Nazis are here. So of course we didn't win. Or they faked the moon landing. Well, so did Russia. So did China.
And that India did last week.
And they're making it so obvious. They used, 1980s space invaders. But so all of this, I think, is just meant to divide us, anger us, and I think the ultimate goal is the soul harvest.
The soul harvest, yes. Yes. And who, why, or what? We're not going to find it in the terrarium that we live in. We have to look outside of that. And that's why I'm so intrigued by things like star forts. You really couldn't see them or see anything about them till we had drones. So now people are getting just high enough to see that these structures, these enormous, beautiful structures, are all over the world. From outer Mongolia to the tip of Patagonia. They're everywhere. We didn't build them. Castles and cities are built on top of them. We didn't build them. Yeah, free energy. They all have water sources. Probably, it may turn out to be the source of electricity and the source of power, and the whole idea of atmospheric recycling and all that. Maybe that's all wrong.
Right. So, I'm sure it's all wrong, because if they told it to us, it's wrong. A broken clock's right twice a day. So maybe a couple things are accidentally right on purpose to control us again. But again, that is the one thing they can't control or corrupt or usurp, is this understanding from within, which is why they're trying so hard to poison us on each and every corner of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the star forts, but because that is so fascinating. And also, when we're talking about these civilizations and these cities turning to dust, I was in Maui in Lahaina the day of the fire.
Oh my goodness.
With my son and his two friends. Oh. And we were going to just kind of tool around there for a while and go and watch the sunset, because they had closed Mount Haleakala, that was our original plan. And just on a whim, I decided not to. I decided, let's go back to Kihei and stay there. Well, then you look at the entire town was incinerated to dust. And so
we don't even know.
And umbrellas are left standing, and some things are left standing, yet the cars and the houses are just dust. Like you're talking about these other cities, these direct energy weapons that likely were the cause of that. Perhaps part of me wonders sometimes, Juliette, how many times they've reset this.
And what happened to the previous civilizations? Were they in the same situation? Was it because there is information about these civilizations. But
Right. But
sort of
it's fishy.
my theory is that the Crusaders, the Templars, they knew about these star forts and may have come from there, but they were able to get down into them, and that's where the knowledge, that's why they became masons. Stonework and geometry and the sacred geometry and power and all these things that they used to become the Templars and the builders and the masons and probably came from the star forts. They have an imperfect understanding of any of it, and they used it for, ultimately for totally greedy purposes by controlling everything. And so we're missing the steps between, okay, we've got souls, we can fight this. Who are we fighting?
Right. I think it's just really quick. First I want to say my friends and I are always asking the question, why don't they just destroy us all at once? They have the technology, they could just wipe us all out. And so I said, I think it's to harvest our souls. But what do they do with our souls once they harvest them?
Well, I also, all the time I was in the program and subjected to these rituals, there would be a child killed on each side of me, but not me. I'd be abused, but not killed. And one of the greatest agonies of my heart was guilt, survivor's guilt. Like, I kept trying to keep these children. So I kept them in me, I kept what they looked like. And I would put them inside of books and toys and, keep them alive. But, children are magical thinkers.
Yeah.
But, but why didn't they kill me? They could have. Yeah. I think it has to do with being a bloodline, but why? I don't know. Nobody told me anything. I've had to struggle and find this all out for myself. But there's we have to crack the cosmic egg. We're stuck in this bubble, and it's going to take more than one person to break it. And
and it seems to me like people like you and me were one in maybe 100,000 or 10,000, because most of the people that I talk to are waking up, but they're so far behind. They're stuck in, this president's going to come save us, or this thing's going to save us. We don't have to do anything except for just stay in our high vibration and light. I mean, yes, I agree. We need to be in love and the light, so that we're not turning people away that still have their souls intact, that have a chance. But, I think we organize somehow. This is nice, these Zooms, that I can actually connect with you, but it doesn't raise our frequency, and it doesn't help us connect and come together so that we can create actual solutions and start doing things.
It's intellectual. It's using the same tools they're using to fight them, and we're not going to win that war.
No.
But the soul is something different, and it's obviously something thereafter. It'd be interesting. I'm doing a podcast next week with Lee Merritt. Do you know? You must know Lee.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a bit about star forts. And I thought it'd be fun to do a podcast with a couple of us maybe we can do something like that.
Yeah,
because it's a start. Because
yes,
we don't need like everybody's approach is, okay, I've got the idea, now let's form a group. Well, you don't need the group. If you start leading, you start doing what you're doing and going ahead, people will follow.
right. I would say the right people will follow.
Right
And
people.
it will be
Yes.
a very small group of individuals, and that's what you need. You don't, because the larger groups get stuck. I was just at Music and
Yeah.
Sky Festival, and yeah, it's interesting, but I see a lot of people getting stuck and using plant medicines and all these things that might be fun and entertaining, but it keeps you separate from your soul's voice. And I think that is what is so important, because that can link up to all of this knowledge and wisdom. It's not me up here saying I'm smart and intelligent. It's coming into that Holy Spirit within us that can link up and understand our next steps that we then do together. It doesn't matter how far we are apart on this planet, but we can create that momentum of from the instructions, the blueprint from God.
Yes, the blueprint has to come from God.
And through our pure hearts. I just want to say that other thing, that none of us that I am connected with now are doing this for the money or for the fame or our acknowledgement, adoration. We're doing it because we can't not do it. Once they came after the children so blatantly, I said, no, this is my hill to die on. And I'm not going to martyr myself, but I'm in this to the end to keep them away from our children and from butchering these children and from this, and I encourage all my listeners to go, and I'll have links to your other podcasts where you explain what this being born into this MK Ultra and being sold and what they put these children through. It will break your heart in two. But that it's so important, because it's then like, okay, now we've got skin in the game. Let's do something, not sit back and wait for the savior complex to have somebody come in and save us.
No, we can do it. And the pressure against us is really tremendous, but it's human. So,
and they don't understand this way of being. They don't understand a pure heart. They don't. And I've had people say, like, why would you go and do that if you're not getting paid or posting about it?
Because there's no pay in it.
Yeah.
You don't get the bling, but the Lord provides. So, I've been offered the world and not taken it, and the world belongs. It took me a long time to understand the concept of the world is the possession, is Satan's.
Yeah.
That the institutions that we rely on are satanic.
Yes.
It's and a republic like ours can only exist if we're a godly people.
Yeah. And
so
that's why
we can control the institutions on a moral and ethical level. What's happened is you've gotten the Satanists, the soul of Satanists controlling. In the satanic teaching, it's called the 7 mountains of culture. In the Bible, it's referred to the temptations of Christ. And what the 7 mountains of culture are, like entertainment, government, finance, communications. I mean, this is all the way back from, Babylonia.
Right.
So, and Satan controls those, or they are on the base. They're satanic, because that's how the world is controlled. But a godly people can control those institutions, and then they work for us.
And when and I think the setup has to be so that it is the pure heart setup, so that you're not tempted. Lead us not into temptation. You're not.
And there's tempted. The temptation. If you want the bling, you're going to be in finance. You're going to be in entertainment. You're going to be in communications. You're going to be in transportation.
And it's never enough.
No, it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough.
Yeah, that's so you can kind of see like what the Native Americans reportedly did. You think about the 7th generation on any and every decision. And so you think about, capitalism. Is turning a profit every quarter sustainable? No, it will have disastrous results. Is, when you're into these entertainment industries, it's built on, these red circle addictions. How many likes did I get? How many followers do I have? That will never be enough. So when you're starting to look at these things that we're setting up now, are they of a pure heart intention, or do they have that built-in hungry ghost that will eventually take over?
Well, yeah, it's our programming. So, okay, we have an idea. This is how we perform as a pure heart. Let's get a group.
Yes.
And we need communications. We need computers. We need this. We need that.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I mean, I started the Angel Coalition in Russia, and it grew to a very successful. It was the first really civic organization throughout the former USSR that was rescuing trafficking victims, and tremendously successful. We did all that. We did the fundraising. We did the computers. We did the trainings. We did the education. And it was successful, and it's still going on. But it didn't stop trafficking. It didn't change people, because the money is so huge. So the temptations are enormous. And at that time, I didn't even realize I was so blocked off from my own past. I'd been trafficked. I was a trafficked child. And those children that they were sacrificing to my right and to my left were foreign children. These were children that were brought in from other places, a lot of them from Mexico. So human trafficking in America was as bad as anywhere else, and maybe worse, because they were better at it.
Right.
So, and the church doesn't help, because people are convinced that they're going to be raptured, that they don't have to go through tribulation. They don't have to work hard. I don't know where they got that idea. I think it's a satanic idea.
It's a satanic idea. And I see a lot of it is, I think initially you allowed yourself to have a translator between you and the divine, you and God. And so the preachers then, who have that, most of them, I believe, have that need for adoration, or the more congregation, more acknowledgement, then they can say pretty much anything that their agenda is given. Hey, we'll give you more this or that, more funding from the federal government, and here's what you say, allow in the rainbow flag, or allow in these other things that corrupt the original word.
Yeah, it just
and
makes me...
I think too, just really quick, what I noticed, I think this is a part of the playbook. I was in a relationship, I don't like labels, but we could label them a sort of narcissistic personality, very toxic. And so I would go in as this loving person trying to help him rise above his challenges, thinking that's what he wanted because that's what he said. But I was just making him a much better narcissist for the next victim. I was creating more of the problem that I was trying to solve, or the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think when we're doing these things, we have this, we then become up with this idea in our heads that is programmed and controlled. We don't really know every aspect. Instead of saying, okay, let's build these programs from the root, from the Holy Spirit within us, that doesn't create more of the same, or, to your point, make the problem worse. We don't think there's trafficking in the United States because they're just better at hiding it, because we've taught them how to be good at hiding it.
Well, it hid it so well. I was part of it. I mean, I was a victim of it and I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
I had no memories before the age of about 14, nothing. So, and I've met many people have come to me with that.
Yeah.
And a surprising number are related to me.
Interesting.
Really interesting. I was at a rally, speaking at a rally, in January, and 5 different women came up to me with almost the same story I had. They'd all read Sparky, so they wanted to talk to me. And when we got into the genetics, the family tree, we were all related. We were all in the same line, not closely related, but
Right.
it's these bloodlines. And now BlackRock has bought Ancestry, which just means that they know who everybody is.
They know, they know who everyone is. They know your bloodlines. They know, like people with Rh negative blood types are, have certain characteristics and bloodlines. And I foolishly, kicking myself, sent my genetic sample to 23andMe, hoping to find information about my birth.
Oh, yes, being adopted.
Which, of course I'm not going to find any information. And I was so angry when I contacted, this was quite a while ago, 15, maybe more years ago. But they said, no, you need to know who he is so we can see his genetics. And I said, well, what's the point of that? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Then you would know.
Yeah. How would I know? You're the ones that are supposed to know. You're collecting all this DNA. And I realized they're just collecting our DNA. They don't have any, possibility of connecting people that way.
Well, Ancestry did. I did.
They told me that Ancestry is better. But
I did it a long time ago. And that's how I found my cousins. We found each other through Ancestry.
Yeah, I think Ancestry. A lot of people have said to do that, but now I'm leery of giving
it to BlackRock.
Yeah,
yeah, but at that time I didn't know anything. So and as soon as I sent it in, they gave me what's called a DNA circle, and apparently I thought everybody got one, but apparently not, because it linked right to the bloodlines, right to the royal lines, right to the baddies. It's like, oh dear, this is going to explain something. And it was true for all those 5 different people. It was men and women that came up to me at this conference, and we're all wondering, what do we do? We've all gotten through it, but I want to make the next step, but in the fact, knowing that I cannot read the Bible, what else is programmed into me?
Right.
I'm flawed, but so I'm living a pretty isolated life right now. I'm focusing on growing flowers and vegetables and just listening to the quiet and knowing myself, because I've never sat still in my life. If you look at my books and everything, I'm going all over the world all the time. This is the first time I've ever really sat still and not been working on somebody else. Like you say, you worked on your narcissist. I've done plenty of that.
Everyone I worked on.
Yeah. And that's being a nurse, being a doctor, being a helper. You do a lot of good things, but at some point you have to, work on your own soul.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that. And I think too, it's the programming too, because I realized this was recently, Juliette, that I was sitting there waiting for someone who was hours late. And I was just kind of enjoying it because there was an outdoor swing. And I realized that's the first time I've sat and done nothing in years and years and years, because it's always next thing. You don't have time to sit in stillness. And I think that's when we really hear those messages coming through.
Yeah. Think about John, the Apostle John, on Patmos Island. One of the first overseas trips I took was when I was in medical school. Went to and wound up on a cruise to Greece and the islands. And the first place I visited was Patmos. And at that time, you could go into his little cave. Now you can't get near it. But they took a little tour group. You had to really hike and walk, and it took a long time to get there. And they took us into the cave and said, "This is where St. John wrote Revelation." And I was like, "Who's St. John?" No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
But for some reason, God had put me there.
Yes.
And I knew it was very special. And it imprinted on me big time.
Yeah.
The smell, the silence, what it would be like to be there for years in this tiny, tiny little cave. Really no stimulation, but you look outside and there's this incredible views of the Adriatic and the islands and the sky. And, you know, no wonder he wrote about, he must have been mad. I mean, that's how I feel when I'm alone a lot and start really, you know, stewing in my own juices, and I feel like I'm going mad, and you sort of have to go mad. And Revelation sounds mad, but it's endured for 2,000 years. We're still reading it, and that was one person on the most isolated little hillside. I mean, it was just a little dirt hillside, way up on towards the top of Patmos Island, just in the middle of freaking nowhere.
Yeah.
There had to be practically nothing to eat and nobody around there. And he must have just gone. It must have felt to him like going mad.
And I wonder, too, in that stillness, we're so programmed against that idea of going mad or going, you know, being alone for that period of time. Granted, I don't think we're meant to be alone. But in that stillness, some pretty amazing things can be released to start with, because I think we're also programmed to keep in the trauma. I mean, I did for, you know, almost 50 years. And then when you finally release it, it's like, why didn't I do that 30 years ago? This was,
it's like, I mean, that was easy.
That was all it. It's so much harder lugging around all of that trauma and, you know, all of these puppeting behaviors that we do because of the trauma, instead of just laying down your burdens or asking the right people to, you know, witness you, see you in all of your mess. And
hence Pilgrim's Progress.
Yeah.
The pilgrim carrying that weight of all his own
like
garbage on his back. That's what we do.
Yeah. It's all the garbage they gave you to pull around.
But we don't let go of it. Somehow it's we're hauling it around.
Yeah.
And it's pulling us down.
Yeah.
But there weren't any answers. I didn't think there were answers in Pilgrim's Progress either. It's sort of inconclusive.
Yeah.
Sort of die and go somewhere. But
well, I think it's really interesting, and I just want to point out, you know, when God put you there to look at inside this cave, and it's always for these multifaceted reasons. I wanted to go to a different country, Portugal, to take my son on this trip in November, and that's where we were going to go. But for some reason, I could not get tickets to Portugal. Nothing was working out. So I asked this person that was helping me make the tickets, I said, is there anything just rock bottom? And they said, I can get you to Rome. And so we were in Rome, and I, on a whim, just picked this Airbnb experience looking at the catacombs under Rome. And we ended up seeing the first painting, supposedly, of Jesus. I saw a painting of the Last Supper, original. And it created that same feeling. That's just this awe and this reverence. You know what you're looking. You know when you hear truth, or you know when you hear someone speaking from their heart, and you know when you're seeing something that is important. And both my son and I were just in awe.
And you know it on so many levels. It's not just verbal. Like, it's not, you can't write down and says, "Oh, this was great." No, it's you're into the universe of it. I mean,
it awakens something, because I visualize our soul vibrating at a different frequency that's contained within this body that's vibrating at a frequency, holding it in. And so when we pass, like when I'm with my hospice patients, I feel like once this stops vibrating, then the soul is released. Well, that soul contained within this vessel picks up these frequencies of truth. So and it will guide you to those frequencies of truth. It's not this that's figuring it out. It's just letting go. I think maybe that's what faith is. Faith in God, that you will be led to the right place. Because we tend to, especially it sounds like you and I were always doing something. Let's figure this out. Let's get some group.
Yeah, right. Let's intellectualize this and verbalize it and share it with everybody.
Yeah. And they'll understand, and then we'll make some progress, and here's how we're going to measure our progress, instead of just going into that cave figuratively and just being still and waiting to be guided, knowing it's going to be okay.
It's interesting about star forts. Obviously, Patmos is a star fort when you look at it from above. And each of the 7 cities of Asia were a star fort. So Jerusalem is a star fort. Bethlehem, Shittim, Jericho, was the Masada. They're all star forts. And my family goes back to Sumeria and Ur. So we're genetically tagged to Ur. And the ziggurat in Ur is a star fort. So Mesopotamia was a star fort. And throughout my life, starting at Patmos, when I started doing a lot of international travel, I've gone from star fort to star fort to star fort. But I only know that in retrospect. But I'm always pulled to the star forts. And I've walked around many. All the other tourists go shopping, and I'm walking around the walls of a city in Rottenburg, or I'm walking around the walls of Geneva, old Geneva, and they're all star forts. So,
interesting.
So there's some pull there. I'm pulled to the star forts, and my ancestors migrated from star fort to star fort to star fort, and they were the founders of Kiev. So they were Varangian Norwegians who came down from the Royal Norwegians that came down from the north, but they were originally tribe of Judah, which migrated to the north, came down the river, and started the Russian dynasty, the Ruriks, and founded Kiev, which is a star fort. So then they went to Novgorod, Pskov, Moscow, all these they're all star forts. So I wish I knew why. But
yeah, well, too, I think, when we go to places, it recharges us with whatever that energy or that frequency is. And I think we create these on-planetary grids with us as humans. I see my work with home health patients is creating a grid. Every person I see, I give my heart to and try to do my best to awaken and empower them, not to enable and help. But I think part of that is, we're creating these somehow grids.
Oh, I think especially you. I mean, you're there at the final passage. We're all going there.
Yeah.
We're all in the chute. We're all going through, and you're helping guide people into the final passage, which is universal.
Yes.
We're not escaping this. We're not going to talk our way out of it. And there won't be a rapture where we're wrapped in cotton and taken off to a big, buffet in the sky.
Right. And that is more of the programming. So if, when you truly read the Bible, it doesn't say anything to that effect. What it says is, you have to do the work. You have to really understand the word of the Bible, and we have to read between the lines, and we have to understand through us. And that doesn't mean just you read it and recite it out loud or do what you're told. It is to really immerse yourself into that understanding, and to your point too about when patients leave this world, when they die, it is that transcendence. But none of us truly know. That's the most important thing. None of us know what's going to happen after that. I help them through that tunnel. I feel like I take their hand and I help them to release anything, forgive themselves, forgive others as they walk through that tunnel, to release so that they are able to transcend. Like, the only way into this realm is through a woman through her birth canal, that the only way out is to release all of that. You can't hold on to that baggage you've been carrying.
Yeah.
You've got to release it. And that's why some people have, and I've been with patients on no food or water for 3 weeks in a death rattle because they had a lot to release, or they don't want to release. They're not ready. They're too scared, knowing all the things that they have done in this life. And I don't know the difference either. I've had some patients that felt soulless to me, so there wasn't anything to do. And I don't know that I can't make a judgment.
Not up to you. It's not yours to judge.
No, but it is fascinating.
Yeah, the pilgrims, when they came from on the ships, the Mayflower, but there were, dozens and hundreds of ships. They were either saints or strangers, and they were all Christians. They all believed the same thing, but the saints had been through tribulation and spent their time in the wilderness, and the strangers hadn't yet. They were certainly, I think, by the time they were done crossing the ocean, they've been through tribulation. But their big break with organized religion was that you had to go through tribulation. You didn't get to the other side. You didn't drop your burdens without suffering, without tribulation, without your fight and proving your faith, really, in hardship is what tribulation is. And as far as I can tell, Jesus didn't say, I'm going to wrap you in cotton and find you a parking place. No, he says, pick up your cross and follow me.
Yeah.
Love one another, care for one another, but you will suffer, and you may even suffer unto death.
Yes.
But you will suffer for your faith. And there's the tribulation. There's no easy way out, just accept that you've got to work for this.
Juliette, I mean, that just was a light bulb, because other than, if you're not, then you're in this constant seeking of love and light and bliss
and
ease, which then is the hungry ghost mentality that will never be enough. There's, how many
eternal buffet
purses do you need? How many, whatever it is that people are after, check yourself and just see, fast forward 20 years and you have all the purses and you have all the designer clothes. When will it be enough? And if it won't, then you're in a hungry ghost trajectory, as opposed to, saying, yeah, I didn't ask for it to be hard, but I am stepping in the faith. And so my prayers morning and night are, let me function in my highest potential so that I am in service of the light and service of God.
And that's where medicine should be.
Yeah.
It's become a business which is driving those 7 mountains of culture. It pays for communication. It buys commercial space. It provides entertainment. It does all this, and it's all based on poisoning you.
Yeah.
So
the sicker you are, the more they make. That is their business model. Why do I have to keep saying it over and over and over? You don't go to the car salesman to tell you the negatives and not to buy the car.
Right,
they're not going to tell you you're healthy. They look for something wrong that they can write a pad of paper and hand it to you, and it is always poison. It will either poison you initially, or it will create a downstream customer with more and more problems, and that is their favorite thing to put in a pill, like vitamin D3.
So the business model takes over.
Yeah. So,
but when you look at the what's it called? The 2 snakes.
Oh, the
symbol of medicine that Baphomet wears.
Yeah.
It's a very old. So medicine is one of the mountains of culture, of the satanic mountains of culture, but they're all crumbling now. So it's and that's why we feel crazy. All the structure is shifting and falling. So it's how it rebuilds is going to determine what happens to humankind. And the point of the programming also is that humankind isn't worth saving. And And I was taught to despise humanity. So all these people are raised up with the idea that cutting the population 90% is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I wrote a lot about these things in a secret journal I kept, which I found 50 years later when my father died, and I got some of my things, and there it was, and it had been written in the backwards in the back of the journal. So, because I knew my parents were always checking the front of the journal, I didn't have a lot of privacy, but I put that in the back about how there were the sheep and there were the goats, and we were the goats. I was a goat, not a sheep, and that's the programming. And the sheep aren't worth saving. And
interesting how that's in the vernacular now, and the medical freedom community, all these people, they are so degrading to the others, calling them sheep and sheeple and retards and name it. And it's like, that's not
right out of it's right out of the Nazi programming.
Yeah.
Which is right out of the satanic programming, which comes all the way up from Pergamon and the 7 cities of Asia and way before that. So,
wow,
we're still struggling with Babylon.
We're still struggling with it, and I understand it too. I had a dream of hugging my adopted father. He died in 1999, and I had this dream a few years ago, right at the cusp of 2020. And I was hugging him in the dream, and I pulled back because I had never really hugged my dad. Didn't love him. And I said, "Is this really you?" And he said, "Yes, it's me, but not the person you remember." And when I realized it was him, I said, "Oh, can you help us? We're in trouble here." And he waited a long time, and he said, "Yes." And he waited a long time again. He said, "But you wouldn't want me to." And the understanding was that you have to do this. You can't bring this energy into any other space or dimension. You can't have 90% of your population sick and brainwashed, and the ones that figured it out just rise. Just
go off in Revelation.
Yeah, go off, and you're in heaven
Eternal
now.
buffet.
Yeah, you win. It's we have to get in there and get into this nitty gritty, which is why the only reason I started this podcast, I don't monetize it. It costs me money. It costs me a lot of time, but I have to at least have people like you have a voice so that we can understand that, yes, this is happening. They are trafficking children. They're doing horrible things to children. But listen to all of Juliette's other podcasts. She really goes in deeply into what's happening so that this is going on. And what does Jesus say in the Bible? If you don't stand between the darkness and children and protect them, there is no worse fate than that. And we can't throw our children to the wolves and have them butcher their perfect bodies at age 10 now in California.
When I was growing up and taking part or forced to be in these rituals, we had a different version of the Bible, the other Bible. And in it, with regard to that, because I was wondering, like, why does God want me and these children to suffer so much? And the quote in the Bible is "suffer the little children," which we were told meant that Jesus wanted us to suffer. It really wasn't until my friend read me the Bible, and we talked about this just a few years ago, that means tolerate, bring me the children. And then I suddenly got the concept of Jesus saying, you can be born into Christ only when you come to me as a child, which means to me that you're coming without all the burdens. You're coming as you were
when
you were a little child. And at that moment, I heard the Holy Spirit laughing and laughing, and I came to Jesus right there. But all those years of believing that I couldn't go to Jesus because he just wanted me to suffer as a child. He wanted this to happen to me. Had nothing to do with anything but the satanic mind control. He's a demon and he wants you to suffer. And I don't know how many people believe that, but I would say
I think a lot.
Anyone that, yeah. You know, when I was in the program, there were 185 different versions of the program supported by the CIA. That's a huge number. I mean, that's thousands of people, including thousands of children. And that was 1976. 40 years later, it's got to be enormous.
And that's what was on paper.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they admitted to.
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't admit to everything.
No.
But so you're hearing that, and you're normalizing Baphomet, you're normalizing Nimrod, you're worshiping Nimrod at Christmas. You notice at Christmas this year, you couldn't find a mention of Jesus anywhere.
Right.
It wasn't, they were taking down mangers, it was Santa, buy stuff, give gifts.
Well, they want it to be illegal. I think California, of course, will lead the way to buy or sell a Bible because it is fake news, false information, and goes against homosexuality. And it does, yes. So that's where we're going. You know, I don't think any of us ever believed we'd be, you know, prohibiting the sale of the Bible or being able to speak the word. But it's wrapping our heads around all of this. And I think it's a true testament to you, because it's easy for us to think we've passed the point of no return. That's another program. Like, it's too late.
Right. That's right. Let's just lay down and die right now.
Let's just lay down and die, hook myself up to a morphine drip, because who knows?
Well, they're offering that now in Canada.
Yeah.
You go in with a sprained ankle and they offer you euthanasia. I'm exaggerating.
No, you're not exaggerating. They're promoting it actively. It's the MAID system. I do this thing where I get journalists sending me information to write for them. That, you know, they want you to write about different illnesses and therapies. Well, one was a pod from Popular Mechanics, where it's a pod that you just lay down in and it gases you and then liquefies your body. And you could have this pod driven to anywhere, like a nice foresty location. And then they're also now promoting it for reduce your carbon footprint. It's the ultimate sacrifice. The programming is so deep, just to say, you know, you're better off contributing as a dead person than you are here living. That's how much they revere us.
I wonder what they do to get your soul while you're dying in the pod.
I'm sure that's probably...
I'm sure that's something part of it.
Extracting it. Because when you give up your life, you have to give up that
your
Holy
soul.
Spirit, your soul.
You've watched people die. It's, to me, in medicine, of course, lots of time at being house staff and going through medical training and all that, we were present at dozens of deaths. And there's a very clear moment when the soul leaves.
Yes.
And I was always amazed that only about half of people could see that.
Yeah.
It was so obvious that the soul goes and that's it.
Yes.
And I could say, this person is dead. And they'd go, no, wait a minute. How can you be sure?
Yeah, let's do our checks. Listen for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
You're
which is
right.
Fine,
You're right.
But it goes.
Yes.
So have you, when you've watched people die, don't you see that when
I can now physically see it. I was able to physically see it the first time it was quite a while ago when my grandmother passed. And she was in the active stages of dying, but my mom kept that from me. And she didn't tell me till the very last minute. So I was in Bellingham, she was in Oregon, and I drove 10 hours straight, stopped one time at a rest stop because I knew there was urgency. I pounded on the door. It was 10 o'clock at night. They let me in. I had to speak my piece to my grandmother, tell her I love her and forgave her. And then a few minutes later, she sat up, saw something, and released her soul. And I saw the soul release. It was this violet color, almost like a violet light color with wings, little butterfly wings. And then further on, my dad had passed, but I wasn't there, but I still felt that soul release. And then now, I'm in probably 100 patients I've helped cross. There have been a few that there is no soul leaving the body. They were perhaps soulless. The rest, some are holding on to it. They're afraid. Some have done some, I feel, pretty horrible things. And then some people, they're just so ready. It's just this beautiful, graceful part of the human experience. So there's no fear in it. As a hospice nurse now, I don't have that. I never really had a fear of death, but now I really don't have a fear. I'm not seeking it out. I know I'm here as long as God wants me here to be in service of the light. And when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. And that's not up to me.
I agree. Yeah. And there's no point in being fearful of the inevitable.
Yeah. And just quickly back to that original point, just a testament to you that you had all of these things happen to you. Some things that it's hard to even hear, and it's haunting. It will haunt you what she's gone through, but she's sitting here as a testament to what is possible. We can heal from anything. We can overcome anything. And I think the more we overcome, the bigger responsibility it is that God and Jesus have asked us to be here for, meaning we're capable of that.
Yes, if we're open and we're listening and we're not in competition for the mountains of culture, for the temptations.
And especially I want to point out too, alcohol, nicotine, cannabis. I'm going to add in, unfortunately, caffeine. It will, especially alcohol and cannabis, will numb you and numb you from that guidance from God. But all of them will keep you separate in a way, so that when you really truly, and I think, look around you, it's go time. We really want to be as authentic in our hearts as possible, because things are happening on a more rapid basis. It's never too late. Keep yourself separate from alcohol, nicotine of any kind, vaping. That will cloud your soul. And
I'm afraid I'm a goner to coffee, so.
Juliette, I started drinking coffee when I was 11 because the taste and the smell. And I'm not off of it completely, but I'm doing this organic dandelion, titrating myself down because I just want to feel what it's like. Jason Christoff, who I just did a podcast with, said it is the drink of slaves, alcohol, number one. But the slave population can do meaningless, mind-numbing activities with a pep in their step, work when they're sick with the caffeine, and I know that firsthand. So for the first time in I'm almost 55, so since the age of 10, this will be the first time I will be completely sober of any substance. So I am really curious. It's an experiment to see.
Well, if you have a formula for withdrawing from caffeine, I will try it.
Okay, I'll send it to you. Yeah, and it's very simple. You won't even notice it.
It's just such a part of in medical school. That's where I really started drinking coffee. Just you're up all night. You're exhausted. And that
Yeah, I think
cup
that's
of
by
coffee and a
design.
bran muffin,
Yes,
made life work.
I know. And that's what it's for,
Mhm.
and it's to keep you going when it's not in alignment. I think when it's not in alignment with your soul, because I can clean for, a couple hours in the morning and do all these things that are repetitive, but it's not furthering me to my heart's and soul's purpose. So it's an experiment. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And I'm from Seattle, and I went to school at University of Washington. So I was at the opening of Starbucks in 1971.
Wow.
And then everyone in Seattle, it became the coffee capital of the world.
Oh yeah, no, I lived in Bellingham for 20 years. Yeah. That's where my coffee addiction took new heights, because it's so dark, and it's like, oh, well, this at least will help make me feel a little better.
Wonder, because all the liberal bastions that have gone dark are all big on coffee.
Well, and it's on every corner.
Yeah, it's
and
everywhere.
Bill Gates bought Starbucks. So, that guy doesn't do anything unless it's meant for complete control and enslavement.
It's funny, I knew him when he was selling Microsoft stock door to door.
Really?
He was going around trying to get investment money from medical students, which was like getting, honey out of a rock. But I remember him, back then.
Well, speaking of the medical solutions, what are some things that you see as what we can do now to start to create our own energy or solutions to what's happening?
Well, I'm just about out of time, but we should have that conversation.
Okay, that would be a good follow-up.
Yeah, I'll be glad to talk about that and talk about my experiences in the former Soviet Union, because their medical system had completely collapsed. And that's the reason I got started working over there, was they needed to completely revamp everything. But their mountains of culture had collapsed. I mean, it was flat. And so I saw what people went through, and millions of people died. And we will go through something similar, and that's coming. So people saying, oh, it's over, it's done, it's done. No. We're just at the beginning.
We're at the beginning.
This collapse is beginning. And I'm thinking that it was 1990 when I first went to the former Soviet Union, and within 2 years it had broken up, and it went through the entire collapse of every aspect of society, and how they dealt with, medicine and medical problems, and the decline in medical services that had been going on for a long time. I actually got cured of a tumor in Crimea. And one of the reasons that everybody wants Crimea is this magical, energetic, it is a star fort, and it is probably the mother of all star forts. Oh. And it's an amazing, almost indescribable place. And I spent quite a bit of time there, and was cured from a cancer that I was told was going to kill me before I was 40. But that's another story. We can talk about that.
Yeah, let's definitely put that on the list, because that's what I really want to talk about, because I want people to know you can heal and lose. I can't say cure on here, we'll get banned, but you can lose your diagnosis. Any and all diagnoses. It's are you willing to do what it takes to get there? So next follow-up, we could talk about your experience in the Soviet, how you lost that tumor, and then where we can go from here. I'm sorry, I didn't even realize it was night.
We've been talking for an hour.
I thought it was probably 45. Usually I have the timer up there, and I thought, okay, I better get the timer going, because it's probably been, 45, 50 minutes. I'm so sorry. Okay, okay. I'll be respectful of your time. Yeah, you are a fascinating person. I am so grateful for this connection, and I wish you all the best. I can't wait to reconnect with you.
Yes, and please send me that caffeine,
I will. I'll send it.
because I've been addicted since Starbucks opened in 1971. That's probably my first. I probably had one of their first cups of coffee, and I've been drinking it ever since.
I'll send you the motivator, Jason Christoph's 10 bullets to get you, off the mindset and the craving. And then I'll show you the titration schedule so you won't even notice.
Great. Okay.
And then the next time we can discuss anything that we've noticed.
Yeah, you'll have to see if I have a cup of coffee then too.
Right. Yeah. And no judgment, of course. I'm just experimenting myself.
Well, very good. I look forward to continuing this conversation.